Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Joanna Daniel. I am founder of Wounds to Scars. And at Wounds to Scars, we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and abuse. And we do that 3 ways through conferences, retreats, and courses. And I can hear the ping. Just wanted to check my sound as I do. So I promised on Friday on our page, or Wounds to Scars page on Facebook. And if you're over on YouTube and you're not following us on our Facebook page, please do. So I promised that I'd come and talk about the link between trauma and self-esteem, because we often don't know the root sometimes of the issues that we're experiencing. And because we don't know the root of the issues that we're experiencing, then we struggle for longer than we need to, struggle for longer than we have to struggle. So I want to talk about the link between trauma and self-esteem. Show the root. I can see that somebody's here. Please say hello so I can know who you are. We can talk. So one of the first things I wanted to highlight, I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 ways that trauma affects self-esteem. And one is a fear of failure that makes decision making hard. So one of the ways that it shows up is through a fear of failure that makes decision making hard. And sometimes people don't know that sometimes that's what's at play. And they think, there's a process that decision making goes through. There's a process that we follow to make decisions and to make good decisions. This is not that process. This is a deeper fear, which is crippling and makes you not want to do anything. So there's also guilt, sometimes guilt because of unrealized expectation or feeling that you can't live up to the expectation of others. So there's guilt. And when there is guilt, sometimes there is a lack of boundaries, which is also deeply rooted in the events that we've experienced, a lack of boundaries. And when sometimes there's a cycle of guilt and codependency and people pleasing because we don't have boundaries, because rooted in that is a lack of self-esteem, because we feel so unworthy. We don't feel like we're worth it. And when we feel like we're not worth it, then, if you have a property that you don't care about, the house is broken down and the yard is overgrown, would you fence that round? No, you wouldn't. You'd keep it there, and the neighborhood kids would play in it. People would treat it poorly. If you have fruit trees, they'd come and pick your fruits, and it would just be for a free for all. But somebody might inherit that property, or you might sell it, or somebody else in the family might decide that, what, I believe this is a prime location. I believe this property is really, really valuable, and I'm going to protect it. I'm going to protect it, and I'm going to put fence around my property, and I'm going to have a gate, and I'm going to have a sign that tells people that they're not allowed to go into my property and pick fruits without my permission. And suddenly, everybody in the neighborhoods have to start interacting with and dealing with your property in a very different way, because you've boundaried it. Somebody saw it as valuable and put a boundary around it. So sometimes, and I know this is a really hard thing to hear and to listen to and to accept, but sometimes because of early trauma that we've experienced, and it sends a message of us not being good enough. And that good enough message is so deep that it makes us not, it influences a people pleasing kind of life where we live to please others and complete self neglect. And so I really want you to hear where the root of that is, okay? Because the self neglect won't change and the low self esteem won't change until you understand your value. And not only understand it in a head understanding, but understand it and is able to internalize those new thoughts and make those new thoughts a part of your everyday life. And when you do, like the property that I've just given an example of, you'll fence it round, you'll boundary yourself, you look after yourself, and you protect yourself, because you'll start to see yourself as valuable. And also, when that happened, the guilt that you feel because of not meeting other people's expectations will also start to dissolve, because now you'll know that other people's expectations, you can't meet them. And it's not really even fair for other people to place their expectations on you. Because what will start to happen is you'll start to be able to boundary yourself. You'll start to understand what your values are. You'll start to understand the things that are important to you. And sometimes the things that are important to you and the things that other people think should be important to you, they're not the same thing. They are miles apart. But because you've begun to understand you and you've begun to accept the you that you're understanding, then other people's view won't matter as much. Sometimes in a safe space, in a safe relationship, whether that's through romantic relationships, whether that is through work, whether that's through personal friendships, or a pastoral care kind of relationship, because you've begun to understand yourself deeply and value and heal the trauma that causes the low self-esteem, you'll be able to explain to somebody, or even say to somebody, I appreciate that you want me to be X, Y, and Z. I appreciate that this is how you see me. I appreciate that you think I have these gifts. However, this is how I see myself, and these are the things that I'm doing right now, and this is what's right for me. So you'll be able to, that's a boundary. You'll be able to bound yourself. You'll be able to start to understand and respect and love and value self enough to have those conversations. I know lots of people who can't have the conversation, and so they allow themselves to be used, and other people just pile expectations onto you, which is not yours. It's probably theirs, leftover lack of self-realization or actualization. They're just giving it to you and expect you to be that person. So this is, as I said, it could be mother or father or friends or family or through church, whichever avenue it comes from. Sometimes people impact us, tell us who we are and what we should be. But when you have a sense of who you are, because you've dealt with the stuff, the root that is causing the fruit, then you'll be able to do it. I want you to know that low self-esteem is a fruit, it's not the root. And what we know about fruits is we don't just pick them off the trees. If you have an apple tree in your yard and you pick the apples, what's going to happen next autumn? You're going to get more apples because it's seasonal, and because the tree is rooted, it has to do with season. However, if you have if you have an apple tree in your yard that is causing problems with the neighbors, it's affecting your house and the yard, and you have one too many apple trees, and you decided that two is enough, you don't need three. In order to get rid of that apple tree, you can't pick the apples because it's going to bear again. You have to dig up the root of the tree, get rid of the tree, and then you'll stop having apples drop over the neighbor's yard and affect your house. All right. So self-esteem, low self-esteem is the fruit. What we want to get to is the root, which is trauma. And we need to understand, what's the traumatic incident that I have experienced? What's that thing that I've encountered in my life that has caused me to be a people pleaser, to have low self-esteem, to be codependent? What is that thing that caused me to struggle with decision making? And I wanted to add here, because sometimes I know people say to me, self-esteem, we shouldn't have self-esteem, especially for Christians. Whether we should or shouldn't is not even the argument. The fact that we have low self-worth, low self-esteem, that's the real issue. So where do I go? And again, I said, if you address just the fruit, like, let me go learn how to fix my self-esteem. Let me learn how to have good self-esteem. I know lots of workbooks are out there and stuff like that. But if they're not getting to the root, then it's going to come back. The fruit is going to bear, the tree is going to bear more fruits in on other directions. So that's how to really fix it. And then you'll fix your decision making problem, and you'll fix the other problems that I mentioned. Another thing that happens as a result of trauma, which causes low self-esteem, is self-blame. We often blame self for some of the events that happens in our lives. A lot of people do that. We blame ourselves. If I didn't, if I'd screamed louder, if I was more feisty, if I was more confident, if I was like so and so, if I wasn't at this place, if only I hadn't gone here, the if only and the what ifs will come, and we blame self. And when you're so deeply rooted in self-blame, if you're blaming yourself for something somebody else does, then you can't love yourself at the same time. You can't hold those two in your mind at the same time. So I want to encourage you to again tackle the root of self-blame and listen to the thoughts that you're saying to yourself about how you feel about yourself, because that will also give you an idea of what's going on internally. and take responsibility for what has happened, which impacts, yeah, we take responsibility for what happened, so it impacts how we see ourselves, and it affects how we set boundaries, it affects how we meet our needs. And that is why I wrote here that some people struggle to give themselves what they need because the trauma leaves them feeling that they don't deserve it or shouldn't have it. I really want you to hear this. And I want you to just comment on it. The trauma, just say that below in the chat. Trauma makes me feel, or makes others feel, or us feel, if you don't want to personalize it, that we don't deserve something or we shouldn't have it. That could be anything. It could be a well ordered life. It could be living without chaos. It could be a relationship that is healthy and safe. It could be the promotion at work. It could be the nice job. It could be living in a safe, healthy space. It could be anything. The trauma will say to you, you don't deserve it. Because especially when we've experienced things like sexual trauma, and I think any trauma when we've experienced it, especially early in life, that's what our community is about. It gives us, it's rooting us so much in shame that it gives this message that you're not enough. I want you to know that trauma lies, that you are enough, that you deserve the best just as much as anybody else, and that you can have the best, and you can learn and understand what is that for you, and how do you do it, how do you have it, how do you internalize it, and how do you make it through. You know, I'm here and I'm saying this to you. I'm not only saying this to you because I'm saying this to you for you. I'm not only saying this to you because, I have a conference and we're dealing with these issues. I'm saying it because one of the things that really gives my heart joy is when I see a woman who didn't believe this in the beginning start to believe it and how it affects her life. And I get to do that with different women who are from different stratas of society. And when this truth is internalized, and starting to have an effect internally and shows on the external. And I didn't mean that these women weren't well dressed, they were. But when you start to believe that you deserve it, that it was the trauma that was lying to you, and you can start to live a different way, it's life changing. It's life changing. And I did this presentation on Friday night around low self-esteem and trauma. And I thought I'm gonna come and give you a condensed version of that. And I've added some things to the condensed version because I want you to know that you don't have to stay stuck and the narrative that is running around in your mind telling you who you are and what you deserve is not true. That dialogue, that internal conversation that you're having is rooted in trauma. And it doesn't have any resemblance to the truth at all. So you deserve the healing that will help you to set boundaries and discover who you are and what your needs are so that you can start to love her, understand her, and meet her needs. Because you ultimately are responsible for that. Love her, understand her, and meet her needs. That's who you are. That's what you deserve. But those are some of the reasons. And of course, that's just a little bit. I've shared what 3 or 4 things that happens as a result of repressed trauma and how it affects our low self-esteem, the two of them, how they interact with each other. Now, as I said before, our conference is March 22nd to 25, and we're tackling some of these subjects with you. And one of the things somebody texted me and was commending me for getting one of the speakers that I'm going to have, Dr. Nadine Collins, and she's really invested in helping women grow. And so I'm so excited about this year because all of the people that are going to be speaking this year are really powerful people who is invested in their own personal growth. And so we're going to get some of their overflow. And I follow all of these people on the various platforms and know that their overflow is going to help you grow because it helps me grow every day, to do deep introspection, to be able to understand What are the roots? Because these things are the fruits. What are the roots of my low self-esteem, my negative self-talk, my low sense of self? What is it? What's the root of my dysfunctional relationship with myself? And how do I change that? How do I have healthy, wholesome relationship with others? How do I get to that place? So, you know how I love this topic, and I can sit here all day. I'm going to be back tomorrow as we're going to dig deeper into another fruit, another aspect of how trauma affects our lives. And I'm hoping to see you at about 1:30 tomorrow. Take care until then. Bye. Before I go, I'm going to put the link for the conference above. The deadline for early bird sign up is Friday, the 25th of February. Don't miss out. Don't miss out. Inbox me if you want to discuss anything, or need a payment plan. I'm always open to those, to having those conversations. So send me a message if you need any of those considerations. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.